I'm about to show you one simple change to how you eat. Seriously, that's it. It takes zero willpower, costs absolutely nothing, and it doesn't take a single food off your plate.
And yet this one change has a massive impact on your blood sugar. Okay, let's get right into it. So what kind of impact are we talking about? This one single change dropped blood sugar spikes by 44%. And I'm not talking about some hypothetical number. This is the real result from a major clinical trial in early 2025 published in Diabetes Care, the official journal of the American Diabetes Association. I mean, that's a result you'd hope for from a powerful medication, but this is something you can do at your very next meal. So what is this magic change? It is simply the order in which you eat your food. Just look at the screen. This is the blood sugar response to the exact same meal. I'm talking same food, same calories, same everything. When the carbs were eaten first, you see that sharp red roller coaster spike. But when those same carbs were eaten last, the peak is 44% lower. It's the difference between a scary roller coaster and a gentle rolling hill, just by changing the sequence. And that right there is the secret. It's this simple. Vegetables first, then your protein and fats, and you save your carbohydrates for the very end. That's it. Now, this isn't some random diet hack from the internet. This is the result of a decade of serious research from Weill Cornell medicine. And you know what the most important part might be? In their long-term studies, a whopping 94% of patients said this was easy to do, easy and incredibly effective. Now, a claim that big, well, it needs some serious proof, right? You can't just say something like that without backing it up. And the researchers at Weill Cornell have been carefully, systematically building the evidence for over a decade. This wasn't a one-off fluke. This is a proven principle confirmed over and over again in 5 separate clinical trials. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, to their very first pilot study in 2015. You know, the results they got were so incredible, they almost seemed too good to be true. All they did was have 11 patients eat their protein and vegetables before their carbs. The result? Their total glucose exposure, that's the overall sugar hit to their system, it dropped by a jaw-dropping 73%. And this quote from the lead researcher, it just perfectly captures the new way of thinking this research kicked off. For decades, nutrition advice has been all about restriction. Don't eat carbs, don't eat sugar, it's all about deprivation. But this research just flipped that whole idea on its head. It's not about what you can't have, it's about the simple sequence of what you can have. It's permissive, not punitive. You know, what's really impressive is watching how they built the case over 10 years. They started with that amazing 73% result in 2015. Then they confirmed it in a bigger trial in 2019. They showed it also works for prevention in people with prediabetes, cutting their spikes by over 40%. Then, in 2023, they proved that people can actually stick with it long term. Every study was another piece of the puzzle, all leading to this year's big breakthrough. And here is the one detail from the latest research that makes this a complete game changer for real life. See, in the earlier studies, people had to wait 10 or 15 minutes between food groups. But the 2025 study proved you don't need any pause at all. You just eat your vegetables, then your protein, then your carbs, one right after the other. That makes it a super practical strategy you can actually use anywhere, anytime, at any meal. Okay, so we've seen the evidence, we know it works, but the big question is why? Why does something so simple have such a powerful effect? Well, let's pop the hood and look at the fascinating biology. It turns out there are 4 powerful mechanisms all working together inside your body when you change your food order. First up is the fiber barrier. When you eat vegetables first, all that fiber mixes with water and forms this thick gel-like mesh in your intestines. Think of it like a sponge lining your gut. So when the carbs arrive later, their sugar has to slowly trickle through that sponge instead of just flooding into your bloodstream all at once. Second, protein acts like a brake on the valve at the bottom of your stomach, physically slowing down how fast food gets released. Third is the GLP-1 trigger, a hormonal response, that is. Well, it's pretty incredible, and we'll get to that in a second. And finally, you put it all together and you get a much lower demand for insulin, which means way less stress on your pancreas over time. Okay, let's talk about that GLP-1 trigger, because this is the real aha moment. You've heard of the blockbuster drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, right? They all work by targeting a hormone in your gut called GLP-1. Well, guess what? This research shows when you eat protein before you eat carbohydrates, your gut releases that very same GLP-1 hormone, naturally. You are literally triggering the very same hormonal pathway as those powerful drugs. You're doing it with food on your plate, for free.
So we've seen the proof, and now we understand the science behind it. Let's get practical. How do you actually do this? Let's break down the simple, actionable plan you can start using with your very next meal. This is the Carb-Last Protocol, and it is incredibly straightforward. Here are her rules. It's really just 3 steps. Step 1. Vegetables. First, you start every meal with some non-starchy veggies, a salad, some steamed broccoli, whatever you like. This puts down that fiber barrier. Step 2. Protein and fats. Second, now you move on to your chicken, your fish, your tofu, your eggs. This is what triggers that GLP-1 and slows down your stomach. And then step 3, carbohydrates, last. Only after you finish the first 2 parts do you eat the bread, the rice, or the pasta. And remember the key from the latest science. No pause needed, just one after the other. Let's make this really concrete. For breakfast, you'd eat your scrambled eggs and spinach, and then you'd have your toast. For lunch, you'd start with a side salad with dressing, and then you'd eat your sandwich. For dinner, you'd enjoy your salmon and asparagus, and only then would you move on to the rice. Heck, it even works for snacks. Have a handful of nuts first to get some protein and fat in before you have your apple slices. It helps buffer that sugar rush. This is so easy to do when you're eating out, too. Here's the hack. Just always order a salad to start. When your main course shows up, eat the protein and the veggies on the plate first, and that bread basket they brought to the table at the beginning, it's not an appetizer anymore. It's now dessert. Save it for the very, very end of the meal. Now I know what you're thinking. What about mixed dishes, like a casserole or a stir-fry, where everything is all jumbled together? The solution is super simple. You just front-load the vegetables. Eat a side salad or just a few raw veggies like carrots or cucumbers before you dig into the main dish. That still sets up that critical fiber barrier and preps your system for the rest of the meal. So why does this strategy work so well for so long when so many diets fail within weeks? The answer is all about psychology. It's about what this approach doesn't ask you to do. It never asks you to give up the foods you love. I mean, the numbers really tell the whole story. Most restrictive diets have terrible long-term success rates. We're talking adherence rates often below 50%. People just can't stick with them. But with this food order protocol, a full 94% of people were still doing it after 16 weeks. And why? Because over 70% of them said it was just easy. This is that fundamental shift in thinking. The old way was a message of don't eat bread, don't eat sugar. It just creates this feeling of deprivation that nobody can sustain. The new approach is a message of when. Eat this before that. It's empowering. It gives you back control without taking away your choices, and that is why people actually stick with it. Okay, before we wrap this up, it is absolutely essential we go over a few important safety warnings. First, this is meant to complement your medical care, not replace it. Never, ever stop or change your medication without talking to your doctor. Second, if you take insulin or a type of drug called a sulfonylurea, which helps your body release more insulin, you have to know that this protocol is powerful. The combined effect could actually cause low blood sugar, so you must discuss this with your doctor first. Third, the total amount of carbs you eat still matters. And finally, if you have a condition called gastroparesis, which is delayed stomach emptying, please consult your doctor before trying this. So let's just bring it all home. We're talking about 5 clinical trials from a world-class institution showing that one simple change in sequence can slash your blood sugar spikes by 44%. A simple change that was found to lower the total glucose exposure to your body by a staggering 73%. And maybe most important of all, this isn't some difficult, miserable lifestyle change. 94% of people found it was easy to stick with because it works with our human nature, not against it. You know, for decades, nutrition advice has been about what to take away, and people have struggled. This research asks a much better question. What if we just change the timing? The answer is crystal clear. So tonight, at dinner, just try it. Eat your vegetables first, then your protein. Save the bread or the rice for the very end. It's the same plate, the same food, just a different sequence. This prescription costs nothing, and you can start tonight.